Hi, this is Timika Chambers, and welcome to another episode of The Seeds We Plant from Create a Generational Love Cycle. And if you are new to this podcast, thank you for tuning in. If you are not, and you've been listening to me for a while, you know that I've taken a break for the majority part of this year, and I am back because this is such an important concept or topic for us because we see so much pain in the world, not just physical pain, but emotional and mental pain. We see wars, of course, violent acts. We see where people are demeaned, slandered. We see still bullying acts in school, out of school, in workplaces, in leaderships. We see still diagnoses that often run our lives, that we become the diagnosis instead of taking on our true identity. And so, just like Mother Teresa stated or was about, she wasn't about against war. You know, it was about pro peace. You create what you want instead of what you don't want. So of course, this podcast is not about breaking the cycle of pain. It's about creating a cycle of love. Love that I believe that we are ultimately made from, love that is at the core of us. We don't have to go looking for it. We have to express it and bring it out. And so, if you were with me last week, I started talking about relationships and the foundation of them. And so, the relationships, one of the things that's important is actually three things. One is that we look at our relationship with our source. You know, what do we believe that we are from? What is this source that is out there? This all powerful, this omnipotent, omnipresent. Power that is out there, whether you call it God, whether you call it, which I have for many years, because that's what I was raised around, God. And it wasn't about, it's not about the name, it's about what you believe in. Do you believe it's good or do you believe it's evil? And so whether you call it God, Allah, the universal mind, spirit, the infinite intelligence, the predecessor, whatever it is, I've often said as I'm writing, the master gardener. So whatever it is you call it, do you have a relationship with the source? My mother told me as a young girl, when I was asking about why didn't we go to church anymore, she said that God is not in a building, that he is he's everywhere. He's not in a building. And that she encouraged me to have a relationship with it, to form a relationship with it, that all of us would have um, to see this presence, you know, once we transition over from human to from spirit and human to mostly spirit. And so that's what I spent my childhood looking and asking and wanting to align with, this power that knew everything, that knew the best decisions to make in life, right? And so, and number two, so relationship with the source. Number two, the relationship with yourself. And yourself is going to be based on what you believe you are. So that source is still there. How do you treat yourself? What do you say to yourself? How do you feel overall? Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you demeaning towards yourself? Right? Because how you treat yourself is often going to play a role in how you treat others. And how you treat others is just a culmination of who you think you are, and whether you like yourself or not, whether you love yourself or not, whether you appreciate yourself or not, whether you accept yourself or not. And so those are the three things we look at when we talk about relationships. You know, how are those? And if there's something that is not quite there, if there's something not quite formed, then the others are going to be impacted, right? So if you don't like yourself, then chances are you don't like how you were created. You're not too fond of the creator, right? And you're not going to be too fond of others. And so vice versa, if you love yourself, typically you're going to love what created you. You're going to accept who you are, and therefore you're going to be more accepting of other people. Now, this week, I actually came across an article it came across my Google account, and the headline was "Homeschooling Hit Records." And so one of the things that I thought about was to talk about not just our journey, my family's journey through homeschooling, because that is a very important aspect of relationship with self, with spirit or source, and with others. But also looking at those discrepancies. We can teach as parents, we can teach our children, or you can teach loved ones. Maybe you have a niece or a nephew, but we can teach them everything that we can at home, but it's when they get outside that they start to get an idea, okay, not everybody's like mom and dad. And that could be a negative, that could be a positive thing. But for my children, it was more of they saw discrepancies in how I was treating them, and what I talked about and how other people were treating them. So they saw the environment that they were going into as somewhat negative, and I'll explain. So, when we're looking at homeschool, just to give you some facts that was mentioned, it said that 6%, this is, I believe it's from reason.com, 6% of the students across the US are in homeschool. And homeschooling articles have been trickling in, right? So occasionally I'll see those, and it talked about how during COVID, people started looking at, okay, can my children do this at home? Can they do homeschooling at home? Then you have the bullying episodes, you have the shootings in the school, and everything that really kind of say, okay, is it better just to teach our child at home? And that was one of the things that I came across too as well. But our journey started off, my husband and I being married in 2009. We talked about homeschooling. That was one of the things we talked about. And as I thought about it today, in hindsight, I think it came because of both of our experiences that we had in school. He had his experiences, definitely some in the beginning that were kind of negative about how teachers treated him, and had some positive. Me, I had some really positive, kind of stern teachers, but it was more of the classmates. I was the one that kind of stood out. I was the one that was like interested in learning and wanted to learn. I had friends, some friends, but towards the end of my school year, I kind of stood out, right? There were things that I saw that I didn't want to be a part of. And often I felt like I was wasting my time literally in school. And this was mostly towards my senior year. So anyway, my husband and I, we talked about homeschooling, and had thought about it. And lo and behold, our as we we got pregnant, had my son, and then I had a daughter. We actually started our children out in public school. It was a Christian academy that I started Cameron, our son, out, who was born about 2 years before our daughter. And so we started that, and that was, had some bases. They attended, had church services, had, talked about God, talked about character. And that's very important to me. When we look at anything else, as you'll see as I continue to talk about the seeds we plant, about building character in our children and helping them to express the true version of themselves. And so they started out in school. Then my husband, my daughter, we were preparing for her, and my husband got a job in Oregon. So we moved to Oregon, and my son was well liked in his school. And when we moved to Oregon, it was a difference. Here we are, we had a mixture of white, predominantly Black, and then we moved to Oregon, and there was predominantly white. And so my husband, sorry, my son is very likable, smiled. Teacher in Oregon, second grade, our first grade teacher said, his smile lights up the room. And so, but he experiencing some bullying type behaviors, calling him outside of his name, some physical touching, as far as pushing him, and addressed it with the school. And they were very nice, very appreciative, very proactive, making sure that Cam had a nice transition to the school. And then we moved again. And he was in a different environment, different school, my daughter too as well. And this all happened within a year. And within a year. So he had 3 schools that he went to in a year. And he experienced some bullying. I tell you, I would wake up and we get ready to school, and I would just see a flat effect on both my daughter and my son's face. My daughter started experiencing some bullying in kindergarten. And my son, it wasn't like it was every day, but I could tell that they were not happy with an environment. If you ever, as a mother, you get that intuitive feeling. If you've been through painful situation and wanted to speak but you really didn't speak, then you know what it feels like, right? When you feel like you don't have a voice or not sure what to say or how someone will take what you want to say. And so I knew something was wrong. And then lo and behold, a storm came, COVID, the pandemic. And this article actually talked about that many people started rethinking how to educate their child. And one of them was similar with me in that it took a minute for them to actually say, okay, we're going to do this at home schooling, right? That they're going to log in and all this stuff. It was talk about it, but we didn't hear anything about it. And my husband and I saw this as an opportunity to homeschool our children, which we went ahead and did for about a year. I being the primary, with me being the primary educator. And there were a couple of things, getting videos. It was fun. It was exciting. I knew what was going on. I knew what my children were learning. I knew what was being said to them. Um, there were some things that we dealt with the school environment, not really knowing everything that was going on, and just really feeling like I wasn't involved in my children's education, especially my daughter. My son a little bit, but two with my daughter. And so I was able to do that. Then I started wondering if I was, because they both were in different grades, they were 2 years apart, that if they were getting what they needed, or if one was getting what they needed and the younger one, if she was getting too much, like if it was over her head. But then there was a part of me that believed that um, if the child can understand it, right? You don't want to hold back a child, but if they can understand it, why not push them forward? Why not challenge them, if you will? I believe that's one of the things that public school systems often, there can be some discrepancies, is that my son was often scored high in reading, but it was like, yeah, he's doing okay, he's getting exemplary, but it's like it was kind of covered up a little bit. And here, I was able to see that, how well they're doing, and we incorporate a lot of stuff. But then I was thinking, okay, still, are they getting individualized care? And then socialization became up another issue. And so I prayed, I visualized regarding that. Just visualize for great teachers, affirm great teachers, socialization a component. And then we came across Willamette Connections, which was their first time being an online public school. And so that was our children opportunity to virtually meet a teacher and be in a classroom setting. So they got to see other children, which was great. And the thing that I loved is that Connections had languages that my children took part in, Chinese and sign language. And they also too work with character. There were themes that were interweaved throughout all of the subject matter that really kind of groomed them. Because when we moved back to Illinois, my husband had found a job and we moved back to Illinois, and I was with my family again, because I originally left many of my family, my mother and my brothers there, but I was with them. And we had an opportunity to put him in a school that I grew up believing was one of the best schools. That was the rumor, right? It was the best school. The school I went to was kind of like the bottom school. And so we did. And within the first week, yelling, my son feeling like he couldn't, his voice was being stripped from him, that he only could say certain things to the teacher, yes, and not really say much. And just really noticed that this environment was nothing like Connections Academy, as far as character, as far as morals. He was even yelled at by the coach, and the coach tried to deny and say he didn't do that. He actually denied it, via email, that he didn't say that. And then the next, my son was like, "No, mom, he said it." So I believed my son. And the next day, the coach said, "I was just trying to motivate you, encourage you." And my son, lo and behold, we had gotten a delayed certificate, and he said, "Mom, this is how you encourage people." The certificate basically had him. I think he had made the his honor roll certificate, and just a pen that went with it, and said something nice. I can't remember what it said, but he said, "Mom, this is how you encourage people. You don't yell at them. You don't embarrass them in front of other people." And he was also too experiencing just some foul language, sexual language, race prejudice, racism, called outside of his name, just really improper. I thought I was going through a storm. I mean, literally, where the principal and others tried to deny it, but then they had a whole assembly that addressed all the issues that were going on. And I think we knew then that it was time for them to go. And so I had done research, like as soon as it automatically, when with the first week or so, when I noticed they were having a problem, but I came across a Celis Academy, and I looked at it, and I was very skeptical about it, because it said it wasn't a like a classroom setting. You had to pay more for that, like over $500 a month. And at that time, we didn't have that to spend to that. I was not getting regular income in. And so I kind of put that back in a folder. But when it started getting, like, we were in November, and my children were like, why, if you love someone, you don't put them in a bad environment. I mean, they could really tell the difference, the discrepancies in what we were saying and what they were experiencing relationship wise. And so even my daughter, when they tried to make it seem like that she was not um, interacting with others, my daughter was looking forward to extremely the whole summer to making friends and being in school, brick and mortar. And when she started experiencing some of the girls that would flat out disobey the teachers and laugh in their face, my daughter knew that she didn't want to be a part of that. And so she started spending her time by herself on her swing, and just really just kind of, she'd speak to people, but if they were doing something that she didn't want to do, she didn't do it. And so then it just came to a point ahead on a Monday morning where my husband was like, if you can find something for them, and we can pay for it, then so be it, Um, so if you can find something. And so something told me to go back to my laptop. I looked at the folder of a Celis Academy, and then I called them, and they told me, they explained it to them, how much it would cost a month, $79 a month per student. They pretty much, they could catch up with their grade level. They would have to start off fresh, and they could catch up. And, all the assignments, the courses, and I don't even know if I think I knew, but they offered so many languages: French, Spanish, all of that, Japanese, French, Spanish, Portuguese, sign language, French, just languages that our children could take, which I wanted them to take. And I asked my children, I said, hey, they had just got a summer job. That summer, my mom had gave them a summer job where they were making approximately $30 a week. And I said, hey, are you willing to buy your freedom, basically? And so they said, yeah, Mom, we'll do it. And I was visualizing. I was actually visualizing for a long time and praying that I would pick them up and be able to tell them, you're done with school, we'll go get something to eat. And they would start their new school platform. And so that ultimately happened. I was so happy to say, hey, this is their last day. And they started, and I mean, they were set. And I'm telling you, Acelis Academy is an online private school, and I can see why people would want to use that academy. I can see why you want to homeschool, because I have seen what Acelis provides for us, even more than Connections Academy. Both well done schools, well done platforms. But with Acelis Academy, we have balance. Our children, they can get up in the morning, we can have devotion, we can pray, we can go over languages. They get to decide when they want to take a test. They can get other classes done. My son has completed now for the second time 2 grades. We'll be completing 2 grades per school semester. He started off a year late because of his grade, his birthday in September. Well, you don't know, but his birthday is in September. And so he's able to, as long as he takes the classes and he passes them, they move him automatically to the next class flexibility. I mean, I normally with Connections Academy, you have to notify the teachers that they're not going to be in if they miss a class or plan to miss a class. With the Celis Academy, they assume that if your child is not available or taking classes, that you have agreed or okay for them to miss class. And so we're not having to be on the phone. They can do their classes, take extra classes during the week if they're going to be off. If they happen to miss a day of class, that the Celis tries to catch them up. You know, if they had 4 steps in math one day, they'll have 5 steps the next day to catch up, and throughout the week to catch them up to, a total of 20 steps per week. However, if they don't finish those steps, they can also to start next week. If they're sick, they get to take it. You probably have heard this. They have time to know themselves. Both of them have stated, that Kayla said in art class, she said, "Mom, they want you to do the art they want you to do. I don't want to do that art." And this girl has really worked on her art over the past year, just so much um, fine tuning her lines, her sonic, and all the things, the color, the shading, all the things that she'd add. She's really just grown in that area of drawing, and Cam with clay and doing what he wants to draw and make. With drawing, he draws as well, and he also makes things with clay. In both in schools, we the one school that they were going to, Cam, he had a limited time between classes. He had 4 minutes to go to his locker, get what he needed to get, go to the bathroom, and go to class. That's that run rush mentality that you see out in the world, where I recommend as an integrative nutrition health coach, as a nurse, a trained nurse, the importance of taking your time and eating. Not 20 minutes. You may need 30 minutes, conscious eating, enjoying your food. And so our children get to do that. And we had actually thought, when we had moved the third time in Illinois, we thought, okay, let's try this other school. We interviewed the school this time, ask questions because we knew what to ask. My son paying attention, asking questions, and they had 3 minutes between classes. And I'm like, if my son is having a hard time with 4, why would we do 3? That's even less. And so we decided, and my son also too, I asked if it was the right class. I asked the universe, the right school, and I got a no. And my son said, the same day that I got a no, I went down and talked to my son, and my son said, "Mom, I don't think that assistant principal was telling the truth. He couldn't even look me in the eye." And so that was the end of that. And we continued at Celis Academy, which continued to work for them. And so they get to eat what they want when they want. They get to spend time in the bathroom, really empty themselves instead of rushing. And then we want to know where irritable bowel and stress and incontinence and diarrhea and constipation and all this stuff come from. Again, this rush mentality that I got to get from one place to another, and how we're creating people that are individuals that are disciplined. Well, are they so disciplined that they can't enjoy their lives? And it wasn't much relationship building. I mean, the everything was limited, 20 minutes for lunch. PE was limited. You had to do what you had to do. Yes, you could be in groups talking, but then the bus, and my son started experiencing, fights on the bus and arguing. And it's like, what is that doing to his relationship and thinking about who he is and this environment that you have me in? And so they don't have that with a Celis. They have freedom to be and do what they want to be and do. And my thing is that I've said before, because of my mindset, that I don't believe just because we went through something means that our children have to go through something. They have to experience something. And so we're supposed to do better, right? You see, you do better. And I believe when free people, free others. And that is my goal. I kid you not, when they were going to the brick-and-mortar school in Illinois, I was thinking of Moses. Let my people go. I mean, literally, I was just thinking that that what my son and them was experiencing, not only did it feel like a whirlwind, like a serious storm, but it just also felt like a form of slavery. That it seemed like they were enslaved in a system. And one of the things my son said, he said, "Mom, what's different about a jail bus and a school bus And I said, what, Kim? He said, the color. And I said, whoa, that's absolutely crazy. So homeschool, and in the article, when they use the word homeschool, they use not just parents homeschooling without an actual program, but also online school. And I'm not here to change anybody's minds about them. I do recommend that if you are sending your child to school, and I know that we are beyond the school, the opening of school or reopening of schools, but I tell you, it was around this time that we started thinking about heavily taking our kids out of school, because we realized that, the environments we put our children in, they can either stagnate their growth or enhance their growth. And school is more than just intellectual, but it's emotional and it's spiritual and of course social. It impacts how they think of themselves and how they think of people that are there to care for them. My son was saying, if you love somebody, you don't put them in a bad environment. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so what does that say? And some people may think it's a part of manipulation, but I actually thought it was the truth. That when you really love someone, you don't put them in environments that are unhealthy, that can stagnate their growth. And you try your best to help enhance the environment. But when people are not listening, when they're trying to blame you or blame your son, and not taking responsibility for their actions, then that's a problem. So I highly recommend, if you have a child that is in school, to definitely talk to your child. Take time to talk to them and ask them what is going on. My son referenced that there were some people who probably did not talk to their parents, or talk to their parents and said, just deal with it. So if you are, think about the relationships we have in the world. Think about the wars. Think about the suicides, teenage suicide. Think about the homicides. Think about teenage pregnancy, and think about drug use. Think about those relationships that we unhealthy relationships that we are in, and how we get there. And often it's because of what we put up with, what we fail to look at or to do something about or to change. And it's that thought process underneath everything. The thought process that our children have to go to a brick and mortar. No, they don't. They have to go to each grade and just really stay in that grade. No, they don't. They can graduate from school earlier. That children should be quiet and not seen, or not heard. No, they need to be seen. They need to be heard. There's too much going on in the world. Too many adults. There were once children that are really providing unsafe, unhealthy environments, that think they can say whatever they want to whoever they want, any way that they want. So it becomes a time where we need to assess our thoughts first before we change anything, before anything is to take place. Assess your thoughts about, what do you think school should be? How should education be? um, what should the relationship between a student and a principal be, a student and a teacher be, a student and a student be? And if that environment is not doing what you believe it should be, then it's time to make a change. It's time to take action. So again, I'm going to leave you with that, to really assess the environment that your children are in. This was more about school, how homeschooling is on the rise, definitely after the pandemic, and just really just rethinking um, the whole idea of school, the quality of education, being able to really bring out the best in our children, to cultivate their gifts and talents properly and not hide them under schoolwork, to have them the access to pick their friends, be involved in extracurricular activities. My daughter dancing, my son playing the guitar, being involved in activities that they really enjoy, and finding people that really enjoy those activities as well. This is Timika Chambers with Create a Generational Love Cycle. The way we break the cycle of pain is we get to the roots of the thoughts that created it in the first place. And we have to really examine every aspect of our lives. Today or this month, I've been looking at the aspect of relationship. and how we define that, and what's the foundation of it, and what are those discrepancies that we can find ourselves in, right? All right. So thank you so much for listening. I look forward to your thoughts. Please share. And until next time, make this lifetime great because you still can.